Awesome. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of Let's Be Blunt. It's awesome to be here with you guys today. There's obviously a lot of movement going on in this industry. Who knows with this administration and a lot of newcomers to the industry are looking to get bills passed both for our favor and against us. And there's some real battles going on right now in cannabis across the United States. More notably, Tennessee and Texas are in the fight for their lives right now. Their representatives are ultimately trying to kill their industry. And there's a few people kind of giving hope and getting injunction filed and things like that. But they have some true battles going on right now in Texas and in Tennessee that will ultimately affect all of us in the industry. North Carolina is no different. We have bills going in both directions that look to everything from full legalization to a medical program to enhancements or bills to kill our current hemp industry. So it's all over the place, as always. But I want to touch a little bit more on what that looks like when these things are decided on the state level and federal level. What sounds good on paper and sounds like a resolution to or a solution to a problem usually creates more of a problem than the problem was to begin with. And this is no different. The war on drugs has been a failed war on drugs. Period. The end. It's been more of a war on the people. And what we've realized is it affects the ones that really can't defend themselves the most. We have this conversation a lot around here and throughout the industry where you had 75% of the people getting arrested for nonviolent drug offenses around cannabis were people of color or minorities, where you have less than 10% representation in the industry for minorities as a whole. But the minority community ultimately took the greatest brunt of this war on drugs. A lot of people think it's just an extension of slavery, to where they could keep privatized prisons full and have cheap labor. And, I could agree with a lot of that. But what people don't really talk about is the repercussions from all of these laws. We now have cannabis stores all over this country that look like Apple stores, sterile, high retail, multi-level marketing kind of deal, over the top, marketing and bright colors and very sterile, clean environment. But yet we still have people sitting in prison to this day for the same things being sold in these stores. So that's always near and dear to my heart, and we can't really celebrate any wins in this industry until we correct the wrongs. And a big part of that is understanding what the past was, the deep-rooted propaganda that was rooted in racism around making this plant illegal to begin with in 1937 with the Stamp Act. But ultimately, the ripple effect and what that's done to families is way worse than anything this plant or most drugs would do to any family. It destroyed families. You had, husband and wife in prison for possession of a plant. And the repercussions that gets passed on for generations to generations of kids having to be raised by their grandparents or in a foster situation. And the ripple effect. And it's not good. It ravages communities. It kills generations. It causes generational curses, which myself and my wife and a lot of people I know are products of. But ultimately, we have to recognize this and understand it to move forward and to correct it. Which brings me to my next guest on the show. He's a previous guest on the show, Mr. Kenny Robinson. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Kenny was brought to me through my wife, good friend of my wife in the car industry, right before I met my wife. And then I got to meet this fine man after meeting her. And we're birthday twins, so we got that in common. Scorpios are the best, period. So everybody knows that. But immediately I recognized this man for who he is and his authenticity and his realness and the soul. And since that time, I'm not going to steal his thunder. I'm going to let him tell you what he's been up to. But he formed a group called Freedom Fighting Missionaries. I got that right?
That's right.
I got that right. And this man has made the impossible possible. And very few people inspire me. Very few people impress me. This man here does. And he literally put his money where his mouth is. He told me some of the things he went through, and I let him talk about it. But he's out here every single day selflessly making a difference. And he's doing it with impossible scenarios, almost non-existent budget at times. It's incredible. But I'm going to let him tell your story. It's a great organization he's got going on. We had him on the show to begin with. He's come a long way. Man, you've been up to a lot.
Yes, I have.
Yes, you have.
I have been busy in the city and throughout the country.
You have. I guess I got to call you doctor now.
That's right.
Yeah, it's doctor. That's all right, man. So tell me about that. You are now honorary doctorate. And for what university is that?
That is a university in Fayetteville,
That's
Upper
amazing.
Room Theological University in
That's
Fayetteville,
impressive.
North Carolina.
That's impressive.
And when people ask me about my honorary doctorate degree, I always know that on paper, I have a 9th grade education and a GED. Right, so I have come a long way since my GED when I was 17 years old to receiving an honorary doctorate degree. Based off of the work that we do in the community, I was completely unaware that this school was following our work in progress since 2020. And after much vetting, they notified me in 2024 and provided me with not only an honorary doctorate degree, but a Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award under the Joe Biden administration.
Wow. Truly incredible. I don't think anybody understands just how incredible that is. You want to explain a little bit about your past growing up?
Yeah.
The 9th grade education, what led you to this organization?
Well, I am 46 years old, be 47 in November. So I was born in 1978, a product of the 80s. I'm old enough to remember when Ronald Reagan was the president.
Wow.
And what that did to the black community with the now recognized failed war on drugs, with an administration that was advocating to say no to drugs while pumping drugs into the very neighborhoods that they were attacking. I am a product of that, born and raised in my childhood in New York, to parents who were addicted to drugs and in and out of incarceration, and brothers and sisters separated. This is a common story right across America in the 80s and 90s, early 2000s, of entire families being ripped apart based off of the crack epidemic and the war on the communities. And me and my family was no different than the many other families across the country. The benefit for me is that at some point my father exited incarceration for the last time and decided that he was going to do the best to get his life together, stay clean, and get all of his children together, and moved us all to the South with his mother, my grandmother, to raise us in a better environment, and moved us to North Carolina, where they were from, to try to provide a better way. But unfortunately, no city across the country got a break from the crack epidemic. It hit every city and every neighborhood across the country, specifically the black neighborhoods. So although I was out of New York, I wasn't out of America during those times. And by the time I was 17 years old, I already had a 2-year-old, had my first child at 15, started selling crack at 13 years old. And by the time I was 21, I had 5 children and had racked up over 30 charges, from everything from drug possession to selling drugs to shooting charges, robbery. I had them all. And by the time I was 23 years old, I was off on my way to federal prison, where I eventually ended up serving 10 years. And when people ask me, what was it like when you went to prison? Immediately when I finally got to the prison that I was going to be at after I went through transit in Atlanta Penitentiary, where I was in a 2-man cell with 2 men on the floor, 2 in the bed and 2 on the floor. Right, my head slept right beside the toilet, and 2 rolls of toilet tissue was my pillows. and we took a shower every 3 days. We was able to use the phone every 2 days, and being fed through a slot at 24 years old with men who were career criminals, right, been in and out of prison their whole life, and thrown into those kind of conditions. But when I finally did arrive to the prison that I was going to start my time at in Edgefield, South Carolina, and was able to go out to the yard, that is when I realized, that the fix was in, right? Because you're talking about 3,000 men on that compound, 2,500 of them were black, right? Maybe 100 of them was white and 400 Hispanics, right? I knew that mathematically this is impossible.
Something's not that,
right?
No.
Yeah, because of the population in the United States for black people versus white people. Mathematically, it's impossible for that many of us to be in there versus the other races. And I knew right then and there at a young age, probably 25 years old, that the fix was in, and I was a product of my upbringing, product of my environments, a product of a failed war on drugs, and a product of my body being used for profit, right? Because the prison system in America is a huge profit generator built off of the model for slavery. If we go back in history all the way to the beginning, right, people were enslaved. The countries that enslaved the most people were the countries that progressed the furthest. And the United States of America was no different. This country was built off of free labor. Had it not been for that, we would not even be sitting here. Right? It was that free labor that built this country, that free labor that built the very streets that you drive on in Charlotte, North Carolina now. And I realized that when I was in prison. But I didn't let that hold me back. I continued to study as much as I could, read as many books as I could, and prepare myself for my ultimate release in 2012.
Wow. I guess, 34 at that point?
That's right.
34. So that's a lot to take in. Yeah, I know your story. It's impactful. And, everybody coming from a place of privilege, not even that great when I was raised very poor. We had things, but coming from a place of privilege, people don't realize. They always say, you had different choices and things, but there really isn't a lot of choices when you're a child. Taking care of yourself ultimately is what happens when you have any kind of caregiver or parent that is addicted to a drug that takes over everything. And, it's still unbelievable to me that part of this American story beyond slavery is exactly what you talked about with the Reagan era, where they were literally running planes of cocaine and creating crack and using people like Freeway Ricky Ross and different people to flood the streets with crack cocaine, meanwhile preaching this war on drugs. And, and it's like, it seems so crazy, but it's like not only happened, it continues to happen, and it's still happening. And I think it's even actually getting worse at this point. And, you read up there, you go up there, and sometimes you just think these lawmakers are just ignorant. And you go up and talk to them, and you educate them, you realize real quick they know plenty. They know exactly what they do. They know the repercussions of these things. They know, the effects, but it is feeding that machine of privatized prisons or feeding that machine of big pharma. We eat American foods that are banned in most countries that make us sick and dependent on American prescriptions. So really quickly you realize, especially being in the space in the industry, is everything is fixed. It's all a system. And the system I used to say was broken, but now I really believe the system works flawlessly to keep the phylum, to keep the socioeconomic gaps growing. And, capitalism ultimately requires some form of slavery, whether it be slavery to debt or free labor or whatever. So it almost maddens me and keeps me up at night to hear these different stories like yours and things. But you think not everybody turns out like Kenny. Not everybody has the fortitude to want to change, or they become so involved in the system they become the system. Or what's the word I'm looking for? The incarceration, where people become where they almost don't want to leave because
institutionalized is the word that they like
institutionalized.
to use.
Yeah. So how do you feel about that word? Like, you think it's just? I think it's more of you already have pigeonholed this person, branded them, labeled them, give them no real life training other than hate, being surrounded by lifetime criminals, and you throw them back into society. What do those options look like at that point?
Same way they looked like in 1865 when slavery ended, right? And entire families were pushed off of plantations, left their plantations, and given nothing to survive with.
Sure.
Right. Many of them returned right back to the plantation that they were at when they realized that it's cold outside.
Yeah.
Realized that you have to eat, that you have to have shelter. Many of them return back. Same thing. You fast forward to the times that we in now, right, where you're released from incarceration and you're given nothing. One fast fact, immediately when you get to prison, one of the very first things you get when you get your clothes is a pair of steel-toe boots, because you're going to work. Right? They ain't no, or go in the hole and lay in the hole 23 and a half hours a day. Other than that, you're going to work. Right? And they know in order for you to work that you're going to have a pair of boots. Now, when you get out, those same pair of boots are not provided to you. And you're faced with people in the community who are saying you ought to just lift yourself up by your bootstraps, Kenny, right? But won't provide you with a pair of boots to do that. And, using that as an analogy, but in reality, what it ends up being, which was the driver of us starting this organization, is not having the boots is like not having an identification or your vital documents, which you're going to need to have employment. Not having sustainable health care, which you're going to need in order to work. Not having sustainable employment that can get you beyond the poverty line and get you where you're able to be self-sufficient, and not having adequate and sufficient housing, which you're going to need in order to survive. So those are the boots that are not provided when a person is released. And for a man, it's tough, but you can multiply all of those things times 5 for a woman when she is released from prison or has a criminal background. That is a barrier to upward mobility. I wasn't from Charlotte, North Carolina, but I decided to relocate here when it was time for me to get out of prison, in hopes that because this was a bigger city, that there'd be opportunities for me in employment, and that, I had a goal then, man, if I could just make $12, $13 an hour, I could make it, right? And I got out all optimistic and ready, right, in Charlotte, North Carolina, where, maybe I could get a felon job, right? Like Trump said, black jobs, right? And we have felon jobs that people with a felony can get, like washing cars, cleaning bathrooms, holding up a sign, cleaning up construction sites. Menial work, hard work for little pay. Right. I thought that because Charlotte was a bigger city, that there'd be more opportunities in those fields. Not that I was going to be able to get into a career. Right. But when I got here and set out to do that, 40 interviews and 40 no's in a row later, I learned that Charlotte, North Carolina was one of the worst places that you can be poor, black, and have any shot at upward mobility. And again, you can multiply that by 5 if you are a Charlotte native. Right? Harder for them. I wasn't from Charlotte. Right? So it was actually easier for me because I didn't have to return back to Gridtown, Betty's Ford Road, the East Side, or whatever part of town that the person is from, that to this day, if it hasn't been gentrified, it's on its way to gentrification. Sure. But for years, these neighborhoods have been uninvested in intentionally, while other parts of the city was built up, while white people decided to move to the suburbs and then decided to move back to the city, then decided to move here, and neighborhoods was completely destroyed. Right. So take all of those things, and what does that mean for a person exiting incarceration? Yeah. That your shot is slim to none. The statistic does exist in Charlotte that if you are born poor here, that you will die poor here. Right? That is a statistic that I didn't make up. It is real and it is true. Sure. Right? Problems right? But what are solutions? Well, after some measure of success for myself in the car business, after begging my way in there, literally begging my way in there, and working 5 times as hard as my counterparts, uh, I decided to retire from that business and start this work after having a measure of success to make sure and create a pathway for others to not have to experience the things that I experienced. And that was the driver of me starting Freedom Fighting Missionaries. And from scratch, just, my own savings, my own time, my own passion, my, limited education on paper.
What was the breaking point? What was probably in your mind for a while, right? What was the moment you said, this is it? I got to do this.
Well, I hit the glass ceiling, right? I went as far as they was going to let me go in the car business, right? They're not going to let you own the joint or nothing, right? They're not going to let you make you be the head man over the dealership, right? But they outright told me in every dealership I worked at, Kenny, you ought to be happy. Here you are sitting here, felon. You make good money. You drive a new car. You're able to take care of your family. You ought to be happy, right? But I had a generation of people behind me, right? Men that I left back behind prison, mothers and fathers who were reaching out to me on social media saying things like, my son is getting out, right? He's been in there 17 years. Kenny, he's smart. He can be like you. He just needs an opportunity. Can you help him? And then, had children, 14 and 15 years old, reaching out on social media saying, my mama's getting out, right? And if she can just get a job, right? And if we can just get someplace to stay. We've been living with my uncle. We've been living with my grandmother. I seen you on Facebook, and I want to know if my mama can be like you. Those are the things that drive a person to want to, enact change. And that's what caused me to put my body on the front line out there during the pandemic, where people who were healthier than I dropped dead from COVID and in their homes. Right here, I am out in the community with the most vulnerable populations, right, trying to assist them. So that was the beginning of this work.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I do appreciate all those efforts and everything you do. We often talk about, it's probably the most challenging demographic to get empathy or public support with.
That's correct.
Are you still seeing that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So for nonprofits, and there's many of them, and there's many causes. A person exiting incarceration, a person with a record, that is the least place that a person wants to send their funds to support.
Sure.
Right. Every other space is above that, including a dog. Right. And that is one thing that I constantly say in Charlotte, North Carolina, right, where we do have a homeless problem. But one thing that we don't have in Charlotte, North Carolina is a stray dog problem. Because the average citizen in Charlotte, North Carolina, if they see a stray dog, will pull over their car, right, will try to comfort it, feed it, call the dog pound, wait for the dog pound to get there. Right? When the dog pound comes there, they're going to treat the dog. They're going to give it health care. Right? They're going to provide it housing, and they're going to vet you before they even let you adopt it. In the meantime, riding by homeless men, women, and children in that process to help the dog. Right? So we have issues where men and women, specifically those that have a background, are treated with less humanity than we do treat a dog.
Right. Yeah, I'll be honest, growing up poor but comparatively privileged, I used to kind of repeat what I heard people around me say. We would be in the car and see someone homeless or see someone struggling, and the immediate judgment would be like, if you can stand out here and hold up a sign, you go get a job. And I repeated that, and I believed that a lot. And then after talking to you years ago and kind of being a bouncer at night in different bars, I've ran into a lot of people that were homeless or, house challenged, if you will. And you meet some real characters no matter what, 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning when I was always out. But it gave me opportunities to talk to a lot of these people, and then it realized you have to make a certain amount of money and have a certain amount of things just to be able to make money, to be able to work. Like, people just go get a job, like you touched on. Okay, great. Where am I going to sleep the night before to make sure I can function on this job? Where am I going to get the clothes that I need to wear to be on this job with? Transportation to and from the job. It's not as easy as just go get a job. And then you throw these other challenges with a criminal record. A lot of times they're probably estranged from their family because of the said criminal record. It's impossible odds, yet you're finding ways and you're providing and you're making a huge impact and change in not only our community, communities nationwide. To date, you have raised a tremendous amount of money for something that's widely not supported. But I think about you all the time. When for you, do you think, okay, my job is done here? What's that line? What is that? I've made a difference, or I don't need to be doing this anymore because whatever is now better. Do you see that line anywhere? What do you see as like a solution, the main solution, perfect world? You've done everything you could do and you've got it to where you want to be. Where is that place?
That's a good question. And at our annual gala this past January, where we brought in the world-renowned expert in this field, Dr. Angela Davis, as a keynote speaker. And that very question in some way was asked to her from the moderator. And she explained to us that freedom is not a destination, right? There's not a point that we're going to reach and say, we've made it, we're here, we can kick back and relax now, right? This is going to be a continuous journey, right? Not only in this generation, but the generations to come. So although we have done monumental, tremendous, historic work in this space, entire families have been able to change and move forward, right? That this job will never be complete, right? I'll never be in a space to where I can say I have made it and there's nobody that needs our services and we can shut the doors. Ultimately, that is a dream, right? We would love to be run out of business, right? That there's no need for reentry services because people are not getting incarcerated at the rate. Those that are being provided with treatment in America as if they were in Norway or Amsterdam or other countries that provide that level of treatment, care, and resources to people.
Because the countries you mentioned now are closing their prisons and actually repurposing them.
That is correct. Because they have real programs and real resources. But what they don't have in those countries are a systemic racism issue that dates all the way back to slavery, right? So while, I always acknowledge the wonderful things that they have in some other countries, but they don't have the issues that we do with systemic racism, which classism is catching up to racism at a tremendous rate. And where our bodies, black bodies and brown bodies, have been the drivers of economic growth in this country, and we have been slaves to that physically. When you look at classism, right, the mind of a poor white man has been in slavery as long as we've been in slavery, right? To convince them that it's me, right, that I'm the reason why they can't progress, right? And that it's me who are taking their jobs. It is me who is making education harder for them, driving up taxes and all of those things. When in fact it is not me. It is the wealthy that has continuously held back the poor white man, right? We could talk all day about poor black people, right? Well,
they want us to think it's black or white.
But we very seldom do we talk about the poor white man and how his mind has become enslaved into believing that it's another race of people that have held them back, so much so that they've run to the polls on that for as far back as we can remember, when that population switched from the Democrats to Republicans and started a lot of the things that we see. But I don't want to get too far away from why I'm here, because I am here for a specific reason. And that reason is for economically opportunities for the people that we serve through the cannabis industry.
Okay.
Where you know all of the facts and all the statistics about how our people have been held back, left back, incarcerated, given no opportunities in this space. Currently still incarcerated, right? So we could talk about problems all day,
Yes, sir.
but today we're here to talk about solutions, and those
Yep.
solutions is through apprenticeships, internships, and opportunities for men like me, people who have went through what I have went through, to be able to enter into this industry, learn this industry, and have an opportunity to grow. We know how small the percentages are of minority-owned businesses in the cannabis industry, but we're here to talk about how to make a difference in that, and I'm anxious
sir.
to hear what the plans are for that.
Yeah, for sure. It's it's something just like you. I've kind of preached about this often, and then I've been criticized on both sides of race, if you will, for the employees in my stores. In Columbia, we had mostly black people, people of color, minorities, and then all the other stores, mostly white people. And I got questioned usually from both sides. Why don't you hire any black folks? Why don't you hire any white folks? But ultimately I can only hire from the pools we have to hire from. We put out broad, general job, offerings, asking everyone and anyone, experienced or not, to come. But, ultimately there's a lot of stigma around this, and a lot of bias and propaganda still, even within the black community, because it has brought so many problems. And a lot of times it's religiously based too, that I've got a lot of pushback, particularly from the Black Caucus of North Carolina, because it was against certain beliefs in their religion, whatever, what have you. But ultimately we don't see a good representation in this industry, in the legal industry, from minorities. So after speaking with you and Representative Lopez last week, I've been thinking about this more and more, and serendipitously I had more people reach out to me, particularly another lady that I helped sell her home. I'm a realtor as well. And we reconvened and got back in touch with each other, but she's actually a minority woman, and she owns a farm on the eastern part of North Carolina, growing hemp products and things. So this was on the forefront in her mind as well. We had the discussion, and I had the discussion amongst Jenna and Basel here. But we're trying to find a way, an apprenticeship program, to bring several different, or try to be a change in several different areas, but ultimately getting more minorities in this industry. We also want to help those that were previously incarcerated, or their offspring or their children or family members have been negatively affected by them being charged or doing time for nonviolent drug offenses. And there's a huge space in this industry that's not being represented, but I want to put my money where my mouth is. So it's not fully developed yet, but we already started the what we think is a good framework for starting this program. And ultimately, we want to help those people that are looking to get employment beyond conviction and doing time, but also the people that are minorities need to be in this industry. And we're hoping to create a program where you can learn the different aspects of this industry, because it's not just weed.
But that's what
cannabis.
people think, right? You
There's
think that
so many different
you
pieces.
see dispensary, you see cannabis retail business, and the only thing you can think of is the transactional part of it, the sale of it.
Because there's so much around that piece.
What other parts of the business is it?
We're no different than other businesses, but we're even more so. We are different because a lot of things, because we have such restrictions in this industry, we have to do ourselves. For instance, this very room we're sitting in, this podcast, was really birthed by Basel and myself and our vision, because we were getting blocked on every platform we tried to do anything on. I had a radio show called Let's Be Blunt. They said, sure, do it. We paid for it. Like 2 episodes in, they're like, yeah, we can't have you back because of the things you're saying. And I was talking about everything legal or whatever. So we had to form companies and create solutions for where we couldn't use normal solutions. So we have everything literally from every other company has, like back office, accounting, ordering, everything, anything normal businesses need. But we also have the growing side, the farming side, where you can learn how to cultivate these products. The extraction side, where you can learn how to extract these products. It's ultimately chemistry. Some of the best people in the game are some of the best chemists in the game. We also have warehouse. We have retail. We also have acquired, with a merger we recently did, shout out to Tyler and the group, we have acquired a business incubator kitchen out of Kernersville, North Carolina. It's ultimately 4 commercial kitchens in one, and from that one space during COVID, they allowed people to come in and use their facilities to start their own small business, whether it be sauces like barbecue sauces and things, food trucks, their own restaurants, their own baked goods that they sell on the corner, whatever. So we've now acquired that piece as well. So we now have the bakery, the food side, or whatever. We have the retail. We also are getting into a model now where it's more like a cafe model. So it's a restaurant dispensary kind of deal as well. And then also from there, all these other pieces that it takes, videography, computer, web work, internet work, all kind of things, all different facets of this. And what I'm hoping to establish is kind of giving someone a course of giving a little piece of each part of this business, an apprenticeship, that ultimately we hit different tranches for everybody to get, but I want it to be enrichment. I want them to, the people that are part of this program, to learn that there is more to this and learn real life skills, give someone a second chance or a better path than what they're on, but learn that this is no different than most businesses, but it also is very different. And we have a lot of things that there's not a university education for, that you would have to learn, that has been taught from generation to generation by mouth or by showing the next generation how to grow, how to cultivate, how to extract, something that's very taboo and has been very illegal up until this point. But there are generations of people out there that learn these things, and to this day, there are people right now very successful in this industry that risk their life and their freedom to get there. And I know they're willing and able to give back as well. But I want to kind of, it's many folds to this. I would like to see more minority people enter the industry. I would like to give some people that made bad choices in their younger years or was caught up in the system in their younger years to give a second chance. And I also would love to see the opportunity to be the change in the community I want to see and create a community where we have the sustainable thing where a lot of our employees now are becoming store owners. They started off ground level, have worked their way up, and some of them have more opportunities and resources available that's got them there quicker. But we're hoping to have a true program within our company where someone can come in grassroots, base level, work their way up in a true management path to get through the company, learn these skill sets, and then ultimately becoming their own store owner or entering somewhere else in this industry, or even having the resume and skill set to go out anywhere they want to go. But I ultimately want to create a system where we can create this path. And I love organizations in the past that I love working with, like Dress for Success, Habitat for Humanity, that people have to give as much as they're getting, but they reinvest into this program after getting through it to make sure it's sustainable. And I would hope that we would create people that would love to become mentors and bring the next person through this path and through this education system, and bringing people into this industry and ultimately being the change instead of waiting around on legislation to get passed or people like you out here fighting for us. Instead of that, maybe we preemptively try to cut it off before someone goes down this path, before they have to feel the repercussions of themselves or someone else going to prison. Maybe we give them a path that they didn't think about. For myself only, like, I was bored as hell through school. I never felt like I belonged anywhere. The only thing I enjoyed doing was selling weed. Mm-hmm. It was great. I got to be social. I got to make a little money. I could do it and go to school and play sports. But I risked my life and my freedom every day for it. But now it's like I don't have to hide about it anymore. And if I can help somebody, one person even, not go through what you went through or what I went through, and see that there's better paths out here, something you could be interested in. It doesn't have to be corporate America. It doesn't have to be a sport. You don't have to pigeonhole yourself. Ultimately, you can kind of do what you want to do what interests you, and find a path and get a real opportunity, and not one fueled by nepotism or or privileged, but someone that's hungry, that wants to learn this industry. I want to give someone a chance that feel like they don't have much one left. And I get approached a lot by people saying, I've never seen my son, my daughter, my spouse, whoever interested in anything like they are in your industry. Can they come meet with you? Can they interview? Can they work for you or whatever? And some worked out, some not. But I would love to create a path that highlights some of these issues where I'm not just sitting back complaining, that I'm doing like you, where I'm trying to make a difference.
And that's why I was so excited to come here to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure.
Because that has been one of the ways that we have been successful in our growth. That message, as I speak to the government, to banks, to foundation, to the average person who we are seeking to be an individual donor, that what we are trying to create is an opportunity and a path, because we know if it exists, right, and when this comes into fruition, and it will, simply because it exists, mathematically people going to travel that path and going to be successful.
Right.
Will all of them that interested? No, but a percentage of them will, just because it exists, will go through it, will be successful, will change generational curses, right? Will create legacies for their children.
Right.
Will give their children an opportunity to enter into this industry. Will give their children an opportunity to seek other means of education and employment.
Sure.
So that was one of the drivers why I was so ready to come here to have this conversation.
Sure.
Because I know once it happens and when it happens that people are going to benefit from it, and it's going to make a lot of changes. I'm very interested myself,
Sure.
for myself, for my son, who's very interested in this industry. And I'm very interested in the franchise and opportunities for those things to be laid out by somebody like you, who knows what the barriers could be, who knows that things have to be broken down, who knows that there has to be a process in place. When we were talking about this the other day, to say, all right, well, this is what it will cost to do that.
Right.
But I know that you would have a harder time going to the bank to secure that. So we already have a plan for that.
Sure.
Right. So those are the things that I talk to big banks about,
right,
and big corporations. No need to name them. We see their buildings up there.
Right.
But I talk to them about that very thing, right, that easily came off of your tongue, of providing a program, providing an apprenticeship, an internship that teaches these things.
Right.
Stop trying to convince us that we must have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree.
Useless.
Even you have that, you get the job, somebody trains you on what to do. Right, where your education doesn't even really come into play on what you're going to actually do.
Right.
So I'm very anxious to get this started.
I was a C student at best my entire school career. I literally did the bare minimum. I would get my book first day of school, go put it in my locker, lock the locker, and I'd go back and get the book the last day of school and turn it in. I never did homework, and I never studied for tests, and I got a C. And then I went to college basically because my parents told me I wasn't college material. They were right, but I did that. And then corporate America, bail bondsman, tow truck business. But I always had this cannabis background since 13, and I was like, man, if I could just go to that. And, I'm there now. And when I got here, I thought it would be a lot better than it is. I've almost ruined it for myself because it's so much work. But, I was like, man, this is great. I'm living my dream. I'm interested in it because take all the propaganda and bullshit away. It is one of the most fascinating things we have on this planet. It's a weed, a plant that's been here way before we were ever here, that fixes so many things. And I see it every day in my life, and customers' lives. It heals. It heals so many things. So I'm watching these dispensaries pop up in these gentrified neighborhoods where we were always kind of in the hood because they wouldn't rent to us anywhere else. And we're still going through that. So I've watched ourselves be the change in these neighborhoods too, that created, job growth and everything else, which seemed cool at first, but all it did was make the neighborhood nicer for more people with better means to come in and push out the very people that helped us build the thing. So what I've learned in this industry in life a lot, but in this industry, there's a lot of people with money with no knowledge of this industry, and there's a lot of people with a lot of knowledge of this industry without money. So I'm hoping, and I've pretty successfully done it a few times now, marrying the two, where you got investors investing into, Ron says it best, my CFO, you don't invest into companies, you invest into people. And ultimately getting these investors to invest in people to be able to open the store. But, capital wise, everything comes down to money. We're hoping to eventually build out having our own in-house funding or funding available where people could do like a work to own kind of thing, like a McDonald's model almost, or whatever, or a Chick-fil-A model, where you have to come in and work a certain amount of time and then you're eligible or whatever, but anybody can ultimately obtain it and finance it. And right now it's still very obtainable. I mean, someone could open a store right now between 50 to 100K, and 100K being top end, and that's all in expenses, products, and everything. Most people are seeing a return on their investment in 4 to 6 months. And then you're looking industry standard across the board. Once all expenses are paid, you're looking at about 24% profit a month. So when I heard you and your expenses, where you feel like you're constantly having to go get money, beg for donations, I was thinking, man, how cool would it even be to form maybe one of these locations as a Freedom Fighting Missionary, Crown Town Cannabis, Celestial Wellness collaboration, where we let that business ultimately fund your program and the program in general. And it's kind of like the whole deal where we can have people work at this, learn the skill sets, and get back in it, and then grow ultimately the footprint of our business, having the footprint built of having a real community where people have each other to help. And then there's so many ancillary pieces. I'm just talking about what we kind of do in-house. There's so many people that feed their families because of us. And when you spend your money locally, it goes back locally. Like our electricians, our audio video people, our air conditioning people, just everything, sheetrock people. I mean, we've hired and continue to hire so many people through this. But I was thinking it would be really cool to even eventually have a location that is completely nonprofit and it just feeds your organization or this apprenticeship program, because we have to do something to make it right. The government obviously don't give a damn, and who knows where it's about to currently go. But ultimately, I want to be the change, and being inspired by you, and a lot of people closest people to me think I'm crazy. Like, you have no time now. What are you gonna do? Whatever. But passion projects, you find ways, you find times. And I'd like to crawl before I walk. I don't like to over promise and under deliver. But you and I had some people in mind. Talked about someone you got in mind. We talked about it off camera. But I would like to start this program. Let's work through it. Let's learn things. Let's get this apprenticeship. Let's allow and help guide people to become dispensary owners, and give resources where we can and help where we can. And I not to pick on my friend Justin. Justin's down in Grover. He was able to get that store open with very little money, and he's being very successful down there in a town where the population I think is currently 800 people. So this is a replicatable model, and the only really issue at this point is forever changing legislation that we're fighting. But currently in North Carolina, we're one of the most liberal states in the hemp industry, and we do have a low barrier of entry right now at this point, and it's not probably going to get any lower from this point. So I really want to capitalize on this point in history for so many reasons, as a business, as opportunities like this. And I really wanted to give this thing some legs and get people around to help us. And, government grants, whatever, but I would like to make this thing self-funded and use some of the profits of sales of this to ultimately generate some of the reparations that are owed to the people that took it the worst.
And I know that it will work because it's already models like that exist.
Sure.
Once we hit a certain point, people, my mentors, start saying, all right, in order to be sustainable, the most sustainable nonprofits have a revenue generating model. Right? If you look at Goodwill, They
Salvation
generate Salvation Army. They generate revenue. Habitat for Humanity. They generate revenue. They have a model for that. And they say, Kenny, you have to find a way to generate some revenue so you're not dependent on grants and not so dependent on donations. And it is just beginning to happen almost divinely that people are coming to us like you to saying, okay, this is a way where we can employ people, we can fund the work, right? We can provide educational opportunities. They don't have to have a bachelor's degree, a master's degree to do this work. Can make money, right? So this is not like just have a job, but actually have an opportunity to make money and to grow. So,
and it's funny, I think this is one of those industries, not only is it not required to have a college education, but I almost feel like you're almost penalized sometimes for having one in this industry. I mean, it's like, it's almost like you could tell those that belong that those that don't immediately. You know what I mean? It's like, if this thing is originated in the streets for me. I learned everything I know about in the streets of cannabis and everything else, even though my mom was very open and educational on it. But, you know, immediately you kind of tell the ones that got in it just for the money, that just it interests them, and they just started smoking last year and never, you know, you could tell that versus someone that's been smoking since they were 13 and sold it because it was a means of survival and took the risk of getting arrested and doing 20 years for possession and took the risk of getting killed because someone shorted you on a transaction, you know, or getting robbed, that we've all been through. But it's almost interesting. You can almost quickly, it's like that you immediately can tell who hadn't did the work, you know, who wasn't with us shooting in the gym, as Rick Ross said. But, you know, it's we got a lot of correct here, and we're two people. We can't fix it all overnight. And with like Representative Lopez's bill, he wanted a 30% tax, which is just, it's great. It got headlines, but it's never going to pass. I also don't think that it should fully fall on the legalized cannabis industry to fully correct everything the government's fucked up. But I think we got to do our part.
Right.
So I want to not let this thing go cold. I want to really put some structure around this. Let's start movement almost immediately, figuring out what we could do with helping even one person. And then let's build on that and build on that and build on that. And I want to try to get support from the cannabis community. And I definitely want you to support this man and what he's doing. And what's the best way someone can help your organization right now? How can they find Freedom Fighting Missionaries? What are you in most need of? Obviously money right now. How can people get involved? How can they get you the money you need?
Well, we can be found across all social media.
Okay.
Just type in Google Freedom Fighting Missionaries. We now have so much exposure that it's 3 pages worth.
Yeah.
Right.
Nice.
On our website is ways to donate and contribute, and some of those ways are, you know, non-monetarily, right? It's things that our families need when they're moving into housing that people don't traditionally think about, like pots and pans, new, like bed sheets, new, pillows, comforters, tissue, cleaning supplies, a broom, mop. Currently, those things, like when family move in, they don't have them. We have to go in our budget to do that.
Right.
One way that we have seen that people respond to is when we create Amazon wish lists. Right? A lot of times we get more than what we need, because that's a way that a person can just do it. It gets sent to where they go. They don't have to leave their house to do it. They don't have to send their money directly to an organization. They can, you know, just purchase it that way and feel the impact. Sure. But the biggest thing that we continue to need is similar to the cannabis industry, and that is advocacy and truth. More people just need to know about what we actually do, how we do it, how it impacts a family.
Sure.
So we're always looking for access to networks.
Sure.
Right? My algorithm is what my algorithm is, right? It reaches the people that it reaches, right? Yours is different, and people out there, theirs is different.
Right.
So, like, we would almost pay for a follow, pay for a like, right? Pay for a reshare because it's just that impactful.
Wow. Okay.
Right? The more people that see what we do, the more people that would be willing to give whatever way that they're giving is for that person.
Sure.
So first things first, find us at Freedom Fighting Missionaries.
Right.
Follow us on whatever you choose, LinkedIn, Twitter, X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We're on it. One of my staff, who was a former client of ours, her job is social media management. Man. We're posting 2 or 3 times across all sites every day.
Nice.
Right, that's just how important that is to us.
Right.
So no excuse to not be able to find us.
Right.
You can find us.
Right.
We're out there. You can find us if you're in Germany. I've done news stories there, and London and France. So we're international now. We can be found.
So how many people out there are trying to emulate what you're doing? Obviously, this is not something that just affects Charlotte, North Carolina. How many people are starting programs based on what you're doing here?
Hundreds.
Yeah.
And when people have been in other cities, they not only reach out to me, they have reached out to our local government to say, like, we see the work that y'all are doing. How can we, bring it to Memphis? How can we bring it to Atlanta, Philadelphia? And I, had put some thought into maybe starting Freedom Fighting Missionaries in other cities, but I went and visited those cities and met with the organizations who do similar work. And what I discovered is that they didn't need me to come there and plant a flag. What they needed was consulting on how to get the funding, how to get into housing development, how to create relationships with philanthropists, how to create partnerships with employers that will hire us. So that's the next level for other cities from us, is to actually go out there, consult, and help them build the infrastructure the way that we have built here in Charlotte.
I love that. Out of everything you've done since you started this journey in helping people with freedom fighting, what do you think is your greatest accomplishment so far, if you had to narrow it down to one?
Our greatest accomplishment, period, has been obtaining Section 8 housing vouchers specifically for this population. When you look at poverty, right, there is no other single piece of paper in the history of poverty that's greater than a Section 8 housing voucher, where the waiting list across the country averages about 5 years.
Wow.
Where in the year 2002, in Charlotte, North Carolina, the Section 8 housing waiting list was around 3,800 people.
Wow.
Today it's 52,000.
Wow.
Right. So this is a huge accomplishment, our greatest accomplishment, convincing HUD, right, and housing authorities that justice-involved individuals and families should have an opportunity at housing, which is a human right. And if housing is a human right, then a person with a background should at least have an opportunity to get on the housing waiting list. And programs like ours should have program-based housing vouchers, which HUD agreed. Which one reason for HUD to deny a person a Section 8 housing voucher and kick your mama out of her housing if you catch a charge.
Wow.
We fought that on a national level, and they changed those policies. Right, so they pretty much banned the box on Section 8 housing vouchers and who can at least get on the list, and provided vouchers to our organization, and we have utilized them, and that is our greatest accomplishment, even bigger than the housing project that we're currently building right now.
Right.
It do no good to have the housing if nobody can afford to get into it. Right. So the vouchers are greater than even the housing themselves.
That's incredible. That's big movements, man. Really proud of you, man. Truly keep the fight up. I will tell you, after the show's over, I do have a little donation for you. I wish it could be more. I plan on at least matching it again before the year's out, if not better. We're a small business. We do okay. We got some money. But there are companies out there far bigger than us with far better resources. and I want to be the example. I want to put my money where my mouth is and try to make a difference, and hopefully challenge and inspire somebody out there that has greater means than us, even, or resources to help us grow this thing, help us help people, especially those that have been caught up in the system, especially those nonviolent drug offenses. And those that ultimately to pay the greatest price in the war on drugs, and that ripple effect is, again, generations long. So I want to challenge everybody out there to try to make the difference. This isn't over between us.
That's
We
right.
got a lot of work to do. This is just talking about it, and hopefully the next show we get on, we talk about the next accomplishments we've achieved. Now, I'll tell you, the next time you're on, in the very near future, we're going to talk about how much we've accomplished by what we decided to do here today.
Right. And we'll have one of our that was an apprentice that is now employed full-time employment.
I love
We'll
that.
have one of them with us on the show the next
Challenge
time.
accepted.
Next
40
time
years
that we
out.
come, that we see it's on camera.
Yep.
The handshake is
40
on
years
camera.
out.
He's agreed to do it.
We gotta do
right.
it, man.
All right.
It starts with one every time,
All
and we. Like I always say to myself, what good is first class if your homies can't sit? But,
That's right.
Without all of us being successful, none of us will be, and nobody's coming to save us. The government's not here to save us. Nobody's coming to save you, and I don't really want to save anybody, but I want to empower people to let them know they can save themselves. And no matter where your starting line is, you can achieve whatever you want to achieve, no matter what's stacked against you. This man, myself, people in this room, we're products of it, and we're fortunate. Not everybody has that.
That's right.
But that can be shown, that can be taught, that can be inspired. And if you can change even one life, it's worth it.
That's right.
'Cause
We
every
are the
life-
gate openers, not the
That's it.
gatekeepers.
That's it. It's all community. Without it, we're nothing. Without each other, we're nothing. It's we the people. And with the most hate and division and uncertainty I've ever seen in in my lifetime, I think it's important to realize we got more in common than not. And people's story are deeper than the labels we give them. So take the opportunity to talk to people, get to know people, and try to be the change. Be the voice that stands up and says this is wrong, and make it right.
Thank you so much for having me here
Thank you.
today. I
Thank
look
you.
forward to coming back.
Yeah, I look forward to having you. It's inspiring. But thanks everybody out there for supporting us. Be sure to like and subscribe. Find us again at letsbeblunt.org. We're going to get more and more consistent with this thing. We got some great shows coming at you. We have an infused dinner coming up at Buffalo, the Horseshoe. And what's the date on April 21st, Monday? Is if you go to cltcbd.com, you can find it on there. We're having an infused dinner. Maybe you have to come as my guest. But it's incredible opportunity to come out and try a culinary side of this industry, see people highlight what they do best. We got a very important month of us of 420. It's a time to celebrate our wins, but also to recognize how much further we got to go. And nobody wins until we all win. So thank you everybody for the love, the support. As always, peace, love, and cannabis. Till next time.